What is up, everybody? Mr. Curtis here. Welcome to topic 3.1. This overall unit is on land-based empires. We're looking at the time period of 1450 to 1750. This is a new time period. This time period is going to take us through Unit 3 and Unit 4. In past classes, you probably referred to this time period as the Age of Exploration, but that's a little bit what we would call Eurocentric because there's other places in the world that are doing some important stuff. So we're going to start in Unit 1 on the land-based empires. These are all non-European empires that are not looking to have overseas colonies. They are all on, for the most part, kind of continuous land. We're going to look at 4 different empires. Not important to know which ones now, but this first video today is on the Ottoman Empire. And before I get into this, just one really important skill that's going to be coming up throughout this unit that we're really going to work on, and one skill that's huge for the AP exam is called contextualization. Contextualization, or context of something, explains what happened right before the time period or the event to explain what happened to give it context. In this case, it would be, so the Ottoman Empire, we're going to talk about 1450, but I'm going to explain how they got into power prior to 1450 to kind of explain who they are and what's important about them. This skill of context of what happened right before to explain better and understand better what happened in time period is very important. We're going to see it in every single essay that we write in here, DBQ, LEQs. Sometimes you need it for the SAQ questions, and sometimes you need it for the multiple choice. It's a huge historical skill to have, so we're going to spend a lot of time doing it. For this unit, you'll see a lot of me starting off by explaining what the context or historical contextualization is, so you can kind of think about it, work on the skill, and just kind of train your mind. So in this case, I just want to set it up. So we're going to go back a little before 1450 of who the Ottoman Empire was. First off, the Ottoman Empire, really from its onset, lasts from 1299 to 1922. That's a 623-year period. That's a really long time. But in order to explain, like to start the Ottoman Empire off, I got to give you an idea of who they are, where they come from before they took over and created this empire. So here's the contextualization of them. First, they are a tribal group. They're from Central Asia, which is right here. This is primarily a Turkish region of the world. And the people in this Turkish region have been migrating for hundreds of years into this area in the Middle East. Some have gone down here. You can see they've kind of spread throughout. This group of Turkish people have settled in this region here, and they're really this origination of the Ottomans are a tribal group led by, and by tribal really just means like kind of familial ties and relations and different connections that people have. It could be a couple hundred people, it could be a couple thousand people, and in this case, they're named after, the Ottomans become named after their first kind of huge leader who helps expand, named Osman I. And they help expand. And the reason they were able to expand is that there's a whole bunch of things that happened in the previous time period. One, if you remember, there was a group of Muslim Turks who settled down here called the Seljuk Turks, who took over kind of the Islamic Caliphate. And they have declined as a result of Mongol invasions. There's really like an area that's kind of ripe for the picking, in a sense, in this region. So this is open for conquering. Also, this area right here is going to be primarily Sunni Muslims. So I just want to point that out because there's going to be a little conflict moving forward between the Ottoman Empire, who are Sunni, and their neighbors in this region here, who are Shia. So that's kind of the context. Let's get into a couple things here. Who's excited? I am. First thing is, how the heck did they expand, you might be asking yourself. Well, let me tell you. Number one, these are often called gunpowder empires because during this period, a lot of the empires that expand are able to use gunpowder, which came from China and East Asia across the Silk Road during Mongol rule. They're able to manipulate that gunpowder to basically form weapons. And the better your weapons, the better your technology, the better organization of your military, and the stronger the motivation is to fight, the better off you are. And in this case, the Ottoman Empire, as you see here, really expands from this region right here, which is where this Osman I and his group were, and they slowly expand out. So they're here in the 1300s. And then by the 1600s, at the peak of the Ottoman Empire, they're on 3 continents. So we're on Africa, Europe, and Asia. The biggest deal of the Ottoman Empire, the biggest deal of this time period in this 1450 cutoff, one of the major reasons that that date is chosen as the cutoff for AP World for the new topic or new time period, is because in 1453, the Ottomans conquer the capital city of the Byzantine Empire. And the Byzantine Empire had been around for almost, if not a little bit longer than 1,000 years. And when they were around for 1,000 years, now you finally have disrupted things, because this is not ruled by Eastern Orthodox Christians anymore. We now have a Sunni Muslim group who are in here and have conquered this region. And the reason that's important is this Mediterranean Sea is huge. It's a huge trade region. And some people use the capital city here, which was Constantinople, now Istanbul, to gain access into the Black Sea and into other goods up in this region. So now you have a new group trading it, which really disrupts the flow of trade, especially for some people who are over here who are relying on this city to gain their goods. So they're going to expand out, guns, cannons, navy. Obviously, you're going to need a navy because you're on the Mediterranean Sea. So a bunch of important stuff. Next thing is how they govern. Here's the deal with this. As we go into these next videos, you're going to see this same structure of government structure, monumental architecture. So when we get into the next empire, the Safavids, you're going to see the same thing, government, monumental. And I really want you to kind of pay attention as we move forward in these videos to think about connections between them. But in this case, just with the Ottoman Empire, first is their government structure. They are centralized, and their government is run by what is known as a sultan. And the sultan oversees the entire empire. Now, look back here. This is a huge empire, really big, and we're talking about a time of not very good communication. There's no telegraphs, railroads, cars, internet, phones. So it's really hard to communicate, but he oversees it. And this is the most famous of all of the sultans. Kind of at the peak of the Ottoman Empire was this guy, Suleiman the Magnificent. In the Ottoman Empire, he was referred to as Suleiman the Lawgiver. But in Western culture, he was generally referred to as Suleiman the Magnificent. Anytime you get a name at the end, like magnificent or great or excellent or the most amazing or whatever, generally it's a good thing. And it's usually a positive ruler for the most part. Because his empire is so big, he doesn't personally go out and oversee everything. Travel would be too long. So he has a council who communicates with advisors, and that council talks to him and advises him. And then the Sultan ends up making the decision that's supposed to be carried out throughout the empire. So you have like the emperor or the Sultan makes a decision, it gets spread down, and it kind of slowly, you can imagine, just spreads out and passes around the empire. He's not making like day-to-day decisions for example, like the city of Cairo here. Like they have their own governor, but their local and regional governors who are handling the day-to-day matters can't contradict decisions made by the Sultan. But there are some things the Sultan doesn't need to decide on that the local governor or local region or regional leader can decide. But centralized government power is in his hands. Similar to other places around the world at the time, we're going to see a lot of monumental architecture. So this is architecture that's built as a monument. And most leaders who are centralized and have a lot of power during this time are really going to build things in honor of themselves and build things to show off their power. Wealthy people like to build big things to show that they're important, or to have fancy artwork, or to drive nice cars to say, hey, look at me, I'm rich. Not different during this time period. And Suleiman here, this is one of his palaces. This is one in Istanbul. Looks like it's got a nice view there. I've never been. And then inside you can kind of see, and you'll see here some Islamic architecture. So you'll see kind of the geometric patterns here. You can see the archways here. In here you see the courtyard. So we see the Islamic influence. This is his palace. It's huge, it's enormous, and it's just one of his many palaces. Look how important I am. Third thing, part C, go that way, is how do you recruit people for your military? How do you recruit people for your bureaucracy? I just want to remind you, this came up in past videos, a bureaucracy is not the government structure. This is a monarchy, it's a centralized government, but even when you're a centralized government, you need a bureaucracy. So you need people who are going to carry out the laws. So who's going to carry out the policies? There's a couple things that are going to be used in the Ottoman Empire. The first is for military recruitment, which military soldiers are part of the bureaucracy. They have what is called the Devshrim system, which is right here. The translation roughly, what's often referred to as the blood tax. Christian boys in the Ottoman Empire, all right, are from the ages of 8 to 18 are taken from their families, just taken away forever, never to see them again, and you work either for the government as a bureaucrat or you work as a military soldier. The military soldiers who are in this Devshrim system are called janissaries. They're going to be trained from the age of 8, let's say, just to be military soldiers. And they're going to be taken away from their family, like I said, and your focus is on military. Pretty crazy. No Muslims are taken, no Jews are taken, just Christian boys. Usually they're taken from rural towns and villages. They're not taking these people away from in urban areas. And part of the reason for this is If you take a lot of Christians away from urban areas, you might have a revolt. But if you go to rural areas, it's so small that people can't organize themselves. These Christian soldiers and Christian bureaucrats are forced to convert to Islam, so they're automatically Muslim. They are not slaves. They're not bought and sold. They're paid a salary, and they are a standing army, meaning that this is their only job. If you're in the military, if you're a janissary. If you're a bureaucrat, you convert to Islam. You spend your whole life working for the military. You can get married, you can have children, but this is what you are, and you are now considered Muslim. But not a great system in terms of if you are a Christian family and you're losing your boy to the government. So again, the janissaries this is the first modern standing army in Europe. They were paid, like I said, at its peak, there were 70,000 janissaries in 1680. That is a huge number percentage-wise, which can show why they're able to expand and why they are able to maintain this empire. So part D, we will always do kind of taxation. So how do you bring in funds to pay these janissaries, to pay for the government, to pay for the palaces? They mainly use what's called tax farming, or in this case, the iltizam, which is a horrible pronunciation, but let's pretend it's good. What the government basically does is they auction off taxation rights. So they say, hey, we need to tax, come back here for a second, we need to tax this part of Cairo, or we need to tax down here. Instead of us as the government sending bureaucrats out there to tax, we're going to auction off the taxation rights. So we're going to say, hey, people down in this region, we're going to auction off this area's tax rights, and the highest bidder is going to be able to tax for us, the government. So who's going to be able to pay for this auction? It's going to be wealthy people. So you have wealthy nobles who are now not only wealthy, but they're also the tax man. And if you're the tax man and you've just won the auction rights, and the government says, we want, 25% of your farm products to go to the Sultan, the person who won that bidding is going to say, instead of 25%, I want 40%. I'm going to pocket 15 for myself and send the other 25% to the capital in Istanbul for the Sultan and the government. As a result, wealthy people are going to stay very wealthy. They're going to be able to take these farm products that they're taxing, sell them, make a profit, and then make money off of it. So really what happens is you have these wealthy nobles who are able to stay wealthy, and poor peasants who are going to be taxed at a higher rate, which is really going to lead to some issues later on with this disparity between wealthy people and not wealthy people. And last but not least, I just want to mention the Ottoman Empire is large, so it's very diverse. You have a lot of different religions, a lot of different ethnic groups. Most people who live there are not Turkish. So even though it's an Ottoman Empire and it's run by a Turkish group, most people who live there are not Turkish. It's very, very, very diverse. There's a large Christian and Jewish population, although the Christian and Jewish population is the minority religion. There is a large percentage who are that compared to most other places in the world. And they do allow, the Ottoman Empire does allow for religious toleration. However, if you are not Muslim, there's an extra tax that you have to pay for not being Muslim. This is going to do one thing, and you can imagine if you want to avoid this tax, what do? You convert to Islam. So we're going to see an increase in conversion. Also, there's going to be a different court system for those who are Muslim and those who are not Muslim. So I just want to point out that there is religious toleration, but not everyone's treated equally. However, to be religiously tolerant at this time in the 1600s is very rare. Most places, especially when we get into Western Europe, are forcing religion upon people. There is religious toleration. You do have a choice, but don't confuse that with being fully equal. So that's what I got. We got expansion, then we got the 5 characteristics. We're going to go through this with a couple different empires. That's what I got. Any questions? As always, write it down. I'm out.